Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Wisdom Window webinar. My name is Heidi Totten, and I'm the Marketing Director at Wisdom Window. And today I am so excited to interview Stefan Terringer, who is a fantastic business coach, but also somebody that I've been talking to for the last few minutes about what coaches experience in this industry. And I'm really excited to have him share with you what he has learned. Stefan is the founder of the Human Innovation Garage, which I'm really excited to hear the backstory about how that name came up. And he also lives in Boston, where it's nice and warm and sunny there right now. Just kidding. It's actually, there's a blizzard on the East Coast. So welcome, Stefan. It's great to meet you.
Heidi, fabulous to be here. Thanks so much. And as you said, I'm looking out of my office and I'm looking at 2 feet of snow.
Only 2 feet. Okay.
Only 2 feet.
That's nothing. That's nothing. So, Stefan, tell me about the Human Innovation Garage. What is that all about, and who are you? What do you do?
That's the big question. Who are you always? Favorite of my question to ask people, who are you and what do you stand for? But we'll talk about that a little bit. The Human Innovation Garage really came about in looking at how people really present themselves, how people work with others, and what's the human interaction in any kind of business exchange. And the garage was very simple. It's something where there's tools, there's processes, there's resources we use to help. Generally, we think of it as a tool set in also the context of human innovation. And that's why we added the human piece to the front. The mantra we have is we're nurturing, we're direct, we're no bull, which is why we have the English bulldog as our mascot. And we really focus a lot on one-on-one work with executives, with entrepreneurs, but then also translating that into a lot of group work and teamwork.
Awesome. So how did you get into this? What is the backstory of, of your business and how you became a coach and working with different companies?
One of the things, and let me put that out front, and I hope anybody listening and watching it is not going to get offended. I think in the industry of coach, the differentiator for me is really I look at myself much more as a business advisor, as a business thinker, and as a strategist and executive and entrepreneurship mentor. And I think that ties wonderfully in the question you just asked. For many, many years since the late 90s, I myself have been an entrepreneur, and I'm probably the classical serial entrepreneur. I've had very successful exits, and as I concluded my tenure as the CEO of a company in about late 2012, I was getting calls from people asking, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And it turned into really applying my knowledge, my expertise, my experiences I've collected globally, internationally. I spent over the last 5-6 years a significant amount, close to a year and a half, in India and in other parts of Southeast Asia. Myself being raised in Europe, so that multi-continental attitude and global attitude around it certainly played a role in that as well. To take that and how can I help other entrepreneurs and executives to really find their best self, so to speak. And that translates into everything from time management, between continents, meetings, kind of that meeting obsession of I need to be at every meeting, up to the point of communication, managing up, and other pieces. And what that really has kind of funneled into now for me is, in my practice, is I deal a lot with second and third time entrepreneurs who've had success with first businesses, people who are in the process of just having taken on large amounts of venture capital in a growth phase and a significant growth spurt of their business. And people who are sometimes a little, I don't want to say necessarily stuck, but trying to really get clarity and identify what is the business they really are looking to build upon the base of knowledge they may have. Let me give you a great example. A client of mine has worked in the travel industry. She is now literally currently, and we spoke just yesterday again, she's currently in Portugal, and she's exploring how to build a business service around international travelers who are not staying in hotels. And I don't want to share more than that at this point, because certainly that's also a confidentiality which falls this under. But more importantly, kind of these nudges you get through really directed and qualified and guided conversations. That's a big part of what my practice is about.
So what do you think are kind of the myths surrounding being a business consultant and a strategist and working with people? Because as you and I were discussing before this interview, only 7% of consultants or coaches actually make a living off of what they're doing. So what are some of the myths maybe that you see that people perpetuate in our industry?
I think people are, in our industry, if we're talking, we're having a big dinner table with 20 of us, I think a lot of coaches and who call themselves coaches actually, I believe, are possibly underselling themselves. I think there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of qualified contribution they can make to somebody. And I think people who work and title themselves just as coaches, they have a great fear of stepping into the boundary of consulting. Because the fact is, there comes the trusted relationship you build with a client over the period of, a month, very quickly. Because the first question is always, and that's a question which always applies, how coachable is the client, and is the client coachable? Mm-hmm. And I think the other piece is, like we learn in business, and anybody who's worked in business, identify and qualify the client very quickly, and identify if the client is sellable or not, and then move on. I think a lot of coaches are trying to sell themselves in a manner where they're really cutting themselves short. Mm-hmm. Don't beg for business, because you will know if there's a match or there is not. I just had a wonderful conversation myself this morning with a potential client out of just a little west of Orlando. And I happened to travel down to Florida for other business anyways. So we're meeting on Saturday to establish that the chemistry we had on a phone call, which lasted about an hour and 15 minutes, which was plain introductory, if that same chemistry is there when we sit face to face, and is there, kind of that old myth, I'm going to have to interview for an hour to see if I want to hire you or not. That's not the truth. We usually know if that's in large or small corporate or anywhere else, aside all the policies and procedures, we know from a human factor very, very quickly in 15 to 30 seconds if we would hire somebody or not. And that's just a fact. And I think the same thing applies here in the industry of business thinking, business advisory, and so to speak, coaching. So the myth being, and stop doing selling yourself short, selling yourself, trying to convince the client that they need it. Because if the client is not ready to be coached, you're just going to be running against the wall, and that's not satisfying, and it's not for either party a good experience.
So if someone is wanting to work with you, what is your business model? There are so many different business models for even consultants to adapt. What is the path? If I walk in the front door of your business, where do I start, and what's the path that you take me through?
So I'm probably different than a lot of coaches. We actually do have an office. So that's the first piece. So we have the option to meet face-to-face, but we also certainly do, just like we do here, Google Hangouts as well as Skype quite a bit, because even clients who come to the office, they travel for business, and then we do the weekly call or the monthly call and the follow-up. We do that via Skype. But the general way is we have a practice where we don't work on an hourly basis. We work on a monthly retainer basis. And the smallest size engagement we take on is at a minimum of 3 months. Ideally, the engagements are 6 months. And then the first piece is that we really spend a significant amount of, I want to call it discovery. And that's mutual discovery. Discovery for the potential client and discovery for us. And what happens then really is kind of the ball moves into the court of the potential client who's exploring to engage us or engage me. And what we do then is we send almost like a small little questionnaire. And the questionnaire is very simple. It's a little bit about who are you. It's a little bit about what's kind of your goal in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, and very specific. It's about what do you think today your strengths are, your weaknesses are, your challenges are, your liabilities are you carry. And that goes as far as getting it back from some people who say, well, my board is really uncooperative. Well, what does that mean for the CEO who's working with me? Is that may mean we have to work on people management. That may mean we have to work on kind of that classical framework of managing up and leading up, because the board ultimately, particularly if it's an investment stipulated board, the dynamics, they certainly change. So there's various dynamics, but to answer the question, the business model is we're a retained firm, and you don't pay us by the hour. It really is about goals. My favorite response now, and I just heard that from someone not too long ago, but it's kind of become my tool set now, is, oh, so you're like a therapist. And I say, no, I'm not like a therapist, because A, I don't have a license, but B, I also get faster results. Because I think that's a big piece people need to realize. A good business advisor, business thinker, tunes into you very quickly, gets very direct and very spontaneously supportive, and you should see results in the first, second session, because that's just the way. When you listen properly and you tune into the individual, that's just what you need to get out of it as a client. And at the same time, that's kind of a deliverable you need to make yourself very clear as a business thinker and strategist.
So on your website, you have the Noble Weekly blog that you write. Tell us about that, and how could somebody like me, who's small business, I don't have a corporate team. I'm a CEO, but I'm a CEO of me. And so how would what you do serve me, and getting access to your content, your blogs and things like that, how would that help me?
The blog is very straightforward. The blog is kind of a good advice piece, if that's around communications, time management. Time management's a great one, and we get some wonderful feedback. Look at the various time wasters. We have a great one is perfectionism. There's a lot of people out there who want everything exactly the way they want it, perfectly done, and sometimes if it's good enough, that's just enough. So particularly if you are a small business, and the definition in the United States of small to mid-sized business is all over the place, but a small business, let's just focus on the number of people in a business where there's only so much possibility to delegate. That becomes a big factor. But keep in mind also, sometimes time management doesn't just go into the realm of organization. It also goes in the realm of personal life. I had a gentleman who was a senior vice president of an organization, and very successful at work, but his personal situation was really falling apart. And the trigger here really was not visiting when any kind of rehearsals or any kind of concerts or sports events were on the weekends. Well, he was either conducting business on the golf course, or he was conducting business in the office until late night, because he felt he needs to be at every meeting, he needs to be at every conference call, he needs to have conference calls at 10, 11 o'clock at night with overseas clients who had a time difference between, in India, 9.5 and 10.5 hours. And I relate to that, because I've been that guy. So bringing that management piece of how do you manage your time more efficiently, and what meetings are important for you to be there, and where you should delegate where to be there. That's a very, very basic exercise, but it is so powerful and impactful that people generally are sometimes shocked how quickly things change.
What would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody that's in that spot where they are working 24/7? Because that is really a struggle for entrepreneurs.
It is.
We take on every aspect of the business, and especially if we're working from home, or we don't have a team supporting us. What would be your best piece of advice for being able to turn off that switch and be with your family?
The way I generally break it down with my clients is, what of your activities, and which one of your activities let me step back. Analyze your daily schedule almost for a week, and take a look at where do you spend time with, when do you spend the time with that, what is part of your routine, is there something you can change in kind of calming yourself down a little bit, kind of that anxiety in the morning where we all wake up, we take our mobile phone and we take our smartphones and tablets and look at the emails, which automatically puts us in a certain mood, I want to say. But that's an important piece, having a certain routine. But then also take a look at and this is the big word for me always with clients, is what is of strategic value to your business? And how is the ranking? If you rank the activity you do in strategic value 1, 2, 3, 1 being the highest and most important of strategic value, 3 being the least important. And very quickly you will realize, if you're really self-critical and you do that exercise for yourself, and take a schedule from 7 o'clock in the morning until 10 at night, and just take a look at it for a week of all the things you do. Even if you just record it on your smartphone, say, I just spent 2 hours trying to fix my computer. Mm-hmm. Because we don't realize, I mean, technology is a huge time waster. It's creating efficiency, but particularly for a small business and a small, in a one people, two people shop, that becomes a huge factor. Dealing with distractions like that and not focusing on what's really important about business building. But then also making a commitment that if I say I make 2 hours of phone calls because I need to dial for dollars, which is that wonderful sales expression, well, you need to be committed to that and not distracted. A perfect example is when you work with me, I don't want to see a phone call, I don't want to see a message, I don't want to see a WhatsApp, I don't want to see any distractions. Your phone generally is shut off, or put it somewhere where it's not distracting. And these are things where I think a certain self-discipline then on top of that will kick in to really focus on strategic value 1 and strategic value 2.
Awesome. So if somebody wants to work with you, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Easiest way is either through our website, which is www.humaninnovationgarage.com. I'm very easy to find also on LinkedIn, myself, Stefan Theringer, as the name is spelled with the Thieringer, or by our telephone, which is 617-440-6660. So 440-6660 in a 617 area code.
Okay, fabulous. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I've actually been taking mental notes that I'm about to write down, but I didn't want to be distracting. You know, it's always such a pleasure to be able to interview people, hear their stories, and hear their techniques about how they are helping people to better their lives. And I think that you really hit the nail on the head when you were talking about the senior VP who was really successful in business, but he was a failure in his personal life, and that was kind of, you know, crashing down on him. Because I think what we're finding in today's world, which is so fast-paced and where we have our smartphones next to us at all times, is that we tend to be successful in business if we're going to be successful in business or in our personal life, but then our business suffers. And really creating that balance, which really isn't a balance, it's about managing your time effectively.
And that's exactly what it is. I mean, there's a wonderful piece of a philosopher, and he's recognized today as a philosopher, Alan Watts, which is Life and Music. And he says, you know, life is more, we always talk in life about the journey. And music is a little bit about the journey of the music. Like Mozart didn't write the first note and the last note. But I think today what we tend to do for ourselves and for our children and for you know, future generations, we try to say, well, you know, here's where you start and here's where you need to end up. And the reality is that's not necessarily particularly constructive. Business goals and strategic goals within a corporation are very, very important, and a mission and a vision of a business. But, you know, Rome is a city where there's multiple roads leading towards as well. And I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves of that. So it's the journey, it's enjoying the music and dancing and singing and having some fun along the way and sharing that and allowing, you know, for the 2 words which always people get shocked, particularly when I talk to groups, because I hang on those 2 words for quite a bit. One is authenticity and the other one is be vulnerable. Vulnerability is something which is so important. And I think that's something we just don't share with people enough, and we're not open enough to be vulnerable. But that really what makes us human and allows people on a very, very personal and a very endearing manner to connect with us and really understand what we stand for and what the value is we stand for.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and it was definitely something that I needed to hear today. So go and check out Stefan Theringer on LinkedIn or at humaninnovationgarage.com. That's humaninnovationgarage.com. And thank you so much for joining us today, Stefan, and I hope that you can dig out from under that snow today.
Heidi, thank you again for having us on today, and appreciate it, and enjoy Utah, because it sounds like we have more snow than you have right now where it should be.
Absolutely. Send it over here so that people can ski.
Be well. Thank you so much.
Bye.